And in part one of today's show, we're going to zone in on what it really means to adopt a hybrid working culture. And who better to join us in this exciting, challenging, ever-changing world than BT's very own future of work expert, Dr. Nicola Millard. Hello, Nicola. How are you?
Hello, David. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well. Pleased to be here in a studio with guests.
In real life, IRL. Oh, my God.
I know. Right. So, we've spoken a lot about various topics around future of work, and you've always got one eye on future technology, future trends about how we work and collaborate. I want to level set with you. What does hybrid working actually mean?
Well, that's the big question. And to be honest, I've been talking, understandably, over the past 18 months, we've been talking a lot about hybrid work. And to be honest, the conversation had started before the pandemic as well, but it's now become the trendy thing to talk about. The trouble is, I think, that most people are conflating flexible working and hybrid working.
Well, we saw that on the word cloud a moment ago. Flexibility was certainly large there.
And flexibility is part of hybrid working. Now, I keep saying hybrid working is a different way of working. And I use an analogy here, which is my favourite hybrid, which is the zedonk. The zedonk, it's half zebra. It's half donkey.
Okay.
And I have to say, normally the conversation about hybrid working tends to be about how many days should I be in the office. Now, I can tell you that the zedonk does not spend its entire week thinking, am I going to be a zebra or a donkey today? Because it's a different breed. And I think that's what admittedly, the short-term conversation is all about, well, what's the optimal number of days in an office? But actually beyond that, I think hybrid, if you look at pure hybrid, you disconnect it from time. You disconnect it from place, and actually, ultimately, what you are left with is the work itself. So the ultimate question for hybrid is how does work work, and how do we make work better?
Lots of works in there. One thing that I can take away from your zedonk is that what we're talking about is a different breed of work, I guess. Yeah. You love your terms, don't you? We got zedonk this time. I think we had phigital last time that you and I spoke about, that mix of physical and digital, which also comes into the conversation here. Okay, so, we've spoken about that different way, different breed of work. What are the opportunities then for the organisations and maybe for the individuals, for those who want to embrace or do embrace this hybrid working approach, mindset, culture, whatever it is?
Yeah, obviously hybrid, the ideal would be bringing the best of both worlds together. So the digital world and the physical world coming together, and you hopefully get the advantages of both. Yeah. I think absolutely there is a flexibility piece here. So I think the pandemic has taught us one very big thing, is that work can actually happen outside the four walls of an office. So work has kind of left the building.
Right.
But we also know that, I think, as we've gone through the pandemic, I think we've all missed people. So we know now one of the big questions, I guess, that hybrid kind of throws up is what are offices for? And the fundamental answer is they are for socialising about work. So they're about meeting people, collaborating, communicating, and actually critically, I think, also building community. But we can work in other places. And obviously that is all about choice. We know one size does not fit all, but actually, again, one of the things that we need to think about in hybrid is, firstly, how does work for people?
Yep.
How does it work for the organisation? How does it become more productive? But also, with climate crisis looming, how does it work for the planet as well?
Yeah, so you got my mind working there with this whole concept of socialising at work. And, on the one hand, you could see, some business leaders, some leaders of organisations who are very productivity driven, of course, going, socialising, I don't want that going on. I want productivity. But actually, that social aspect of work is really important, I think.
Completely right. I think productivity is a big one to discuss. We don't have time today, but I think for knowledge workers especially, what is productivity? Because a lot of the measures that we use, and this is fundamental again to how we reinvent work, were actually invented in the factory era. So it was all about inputs and outputs. And when your inputs and outputs are slightly less certain, what is productivity? And particularly with knowledge workers, a lot of that productivity is around ideas. And how do you get ideas? Well, often that is about socialisation.
So fundamental relook, sorry, that's not very good English, but a fundamental re-examination of what it is that we do, how we do it in the workplace, and what productivity actually means. Hold those thoughts, because, we're talking about some of the positives and some of the fundamental questions that we're asking here about this hybrid workplace. But of course, there are challenges as well there too. So we want to know from you at this point what the biggest challenges are that you've faced when it comes to your hybrid working experiences so far. There's a poll on the side of the screen right now. Let us know your thoughts. And Nicola, I want to know what your thoughts are with regards to those challenges towards hybrid working.
Yeah, well, I call them horrible hybrids. And I think we've probably all experienced some level of horrible hybrids in the past. The obvious one being the meeting that is split between digital and physical space. And far from giving the advantages of both digital and physical, sometimes it does completely the opposite in that, it just doesn't work terribly well. So I think that's one thing. But actually, it boils down to one of the fundamental cultural challenges for horrible hybrids is around what I call proximity bias.
Right.
And it's a natural way our brain is wired. And, we have a very clever but quite tribal brain.
Yes.
And so we tend to trust and maybe value people that we see on a very regular basis. The trouble is, of course, in a hybrid model, you can't guarantee co-location. So if people feel as if, they are being left out of the conversation, particularly in those horrible hybrid meetings, or aren't getting promoted or aren't getting a bonus, that's going to drive people into very normal patterns of working, which often then involves commuting into a centralised office. So hybrid, again, you're disconnecting from time and place. Actually, we also need to think digital first, because the common ground between physical and digital is the digital space. That's the one place where people can come together. So I call these digital first hybrids. So how do we take a digital first attitude to everything? And that includes management as well.
Right, so Good point. Digital first, hybrid, digital is that common ground. So what are the ways in which technology can help to overcome some of these challenges, the horrible hybrid, as you call it then? Yeah,
well, I think let's go down on the meeting a little bit, because I think that's one of the things that's always being discussed. And it's quite interesting that one of my customers actually the other week put it really nicely, which was if you've got a hybrid meeting, it's either all room or it's all Zoom. Now, obviously, other conference providers are available, but they don't rhyme quite so well as Zoom. But yes, basically what we're looking at is if you've got that hybrid meeting, even if you're in a physical space, you might want to be on camera. So because then you end up. Everyone is then visible. I think, again, what we've learnt during the pandemic is when everyone has their little celebrity square on the screen, when you can see everybody very clearly, it's actually a great leveller. And digital is a great leveller.
Yeah, indeed. So with that in mind, let's take another look at the poll that I know you guys have been responding to. Your thoughts on what some of these challenges are up on the screen now. Let's take a look at what your top thoughts were. Okay, so biggest challenges with hybrid working, Nicola. We've spoken about the technology, ineffective collaboration tools. More than a third of people there are saying it's not the right culture or leadership. That's the biggest challenge. Surprised?
No.
Nope.
I mean, honestly, the technology has underpinned this. And I keep saying, if there was ever an ideal time for a pandemic, it's now, because you have the holy trinity of collaboration, cloud, and also connectivity that have come together. And I think if we'd had a pandemic 10 years ago, we would have really struggled. So the collaboration tools, the technologies have enabled us to do this, but actually it's a mindset change as well. And that's what I think hybrid fundamentally isn't just about the technology that underpins it, but it is a mindset change.
We've had a question coming from the audience. I've got all your questions zooming in on my iPad, or coming in, through the internet onto my iPad here. And it's a question from Karen. Thank you very much indeed for your question. And this fits into the horrible hybrid thing you were just talking about. Karen asks, how do you balance collaboration in meetings when 50% of the meeting is in the meeting room and 50% are on individual screens at home? Is this everyone sat there on those laptops? Because I'm not sure the technology always gets silly sound echo and feedback. I'm not sure we've quite got that right yet.
Well, I think the first thing to learn with that is always have one sound source in the room. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I think it is a big challenge. I've had a few horrible hybrids over the past few weeks because people are starting to come back into offices. So I had one situation where, with camera seems to be pointing towards a window. So instantly you can't see anyone in the room. And then they get reduced to a tiny little square. Yeah. And then I was in a meeting this week, actually, where most people were digital. There were 6 people in a room, about 20 people on digital. But of course, the room then dominated. Yep. So again, that's an out of sight, out of mind proximity bias. And that requires, well, yes, technology solutions, absolutely. But also, I think the ability to chair a hybrid meeting is a very big skill that leaders need to learn.
Very quickly, one piece of advice that you would have for anyone who is looking to go on this journey and, create this culture, adopt the technology, adopt the mindset of hybrid working?
Well, I think the future's uncertain. Everyone always asks me, what's the hybrid workplace of the future going to look like? And we don't really know. And there are going to be some horrible hybrids coming out, I think, in the next 18 months. So my one piece of advice is use this as a time of experimentation, a time of learning. Learn what works, what doesn't work. And actually, if it doesn't work, learn what does work and try and implement it. So I think admitting that we don't have all the answers is the first big thing.
It's a really good point, actually, really good point. We don't know all the answers yet. This is new to us. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. And so it is a case of testing and learning and evolving. And that sort of stuff isn't a technology problem. It's a cultural problem, isn't it?
Completely right. Absolutely.
Good stuff. Do keep your questions coming in for Nicola. We're out of time for now, but Nicola will be joining us for the live Q&A later on. Keep them coming in, and I'll see you later on in the show.